Hello everybody and welcome to Notorious Yugioh. I'm Notorious Cly and it's time to talk about Tenyi. Tenyi are an archetype of worm-type monsters that love non-effect monsters. There are 6 main deck Tenyi monsters and each of them have a shared effect. If you control no effect monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. And then each main deck Tenyi monster has a bonus effect if you control a non-effect monster. Your main deck Tenyi monsters are as follows: Ashuna, the level 7 light. Vishuddha, the level 7 dark. Adhara, the level 1 earth tuner. Mapura, the level 4 fire. Shatana, the level 4 water. And Nahata, the level 4 wind. Ashuna's unique effect is when you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard and special summon one Tenyi monster from your deck except Ashuna. Vishuddha, while you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, then target one card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. Adhara, while you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, then target one of your banished worm-type monsters, except this specific copy of Adhara, and add it to your hand. That means that if you already have an Adhara banished, you can banish Adhara to add the other Adhara back to your hand. Mapura, when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a face-up non-effect monster you control, quick effect, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Shatana, if a face-up non-effect monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, then target one of those destroyed monsters, special summon it, then you can destroy one monster your opponent controls. And Nahata, when an attack is declared involving your face-up non-effect monster and an opponent's face-up monster, you can banish this card from your hand or graveyard. That opponent's monster loses 1500 attack until the end of this turn. The main deck Tenyi monsters are backed up by some very powerful archetypical spells. We have Vessel for the Dragon Cycle. You can send one worm type monster from your deck to the graveyard, then if you control a face up non-effect monster, you can add from your deck to your hand one Tenyi monster with a different name from the monster that you sent to the graveyard. Heavenly Dragon Circle. Tribute one worm type monster. Add one worm type monster from your deck to your hand, or if you tributed a non-effect monster to activate the card, you can special summon that monster instead. Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi. All non-effect monsters on the field are unaffected by monster effects. Once per turn, if your opponent special summons an effect monster, while you control a face down or non-effect monster, you can draw 2 cards. A lot of the power of Tenyi is concentrated in the main deck, but the extra deck is what ties it all together. The star of the show is the Link 1 Monk of the Tenyi. Its requirement is 1 non-link Tenyi monster. Since all of your Tenyis can special summon themselves from the hand, provided you control no effect monsters, this means any one Tenyi gets you a face-up non-effect monster on the field, which grants you access to all of the Tenyi's bonus effects. There are 4 other Tenyi Link monsters, 3 of which are in the game, and they are Shaman of the Tenyi, Berserker of the Tenyi, and Draco Masters of the Tenyi. Although Monk is the star of the show, each one of these Link monsters is incredibly valuable and an essential piece of the toolbox. Now that we've explained Tenyi, let's get into the deck profile. I feel like we did a good job of introducing all of the main deck Tenyis, so I'm not going to rehash them here, but I am going to touch on the ratios behind each one. Ashuna, Vishuddha, and Adhara are all 3-ofs, and in my opinion, it's mandatory to play all of them at 3. Vishuddha is probably the one you could get away with playing less of, but it's your best tool for breaking boards when going second, so in my opinion, 3 Vishuddha is optimal. Ashuna and Adhara are mandatory 3-ofs in my opinion because they're your best playmakers. They are the ones that grant you the most resources. Adhara gets you Tenyis that you've banished back to your hand, and Ashuna gets you Tenyis from your deck on board, which allows you to continue link climbing or puts the right pieces in place for you to synchro summon. Additionally, Ashuna, Vishuddha, and Adhara are all essential pieces for making your powerful synchros. Adhara being the level 1 tuner, and Vishuddha and Ashuna being the level 7 non-tuners. Being able to constantly threaten Draco Berserker or Boxia, in addition to any of your Link monsters, is incredibly important for this deck. Mapura and Shatana are being played as 1-ofs because their bonus effect when you control a face-up non-effect monster is great and adds a lot of potency to your end board, but unfortunately they don't really do a lot on their own. They require your opponent to do something in order to maximize their ability. Also, they're both level 4, which isn't the greatest when you consider we're only trying to link climb and make synchro 8s. Rounding out the Tenyi main deck cards, we have 2 Vessel and 2 Circle. I'm I'm running 2 Vessel because it's an incredible consistency tool, and it does a fair amount of setup on its own. But since it's a hard once per turn, I don't really want to be seeing multiples of these in my opening hand. I feel like 2 of these in a 20 card list gives me enough of an opportunity to see it. Especially when you consider that I'm running 3 Adhara and 3 Ashuna, which are the other best playmakers. If I have access to Adhara and Ashuna, Vessel is nice but not required. If you are trying to go the free to play route and run only 2 copies of all the high rarity main deck monsters, I would highly recommend running extra copies of Vessel. I'm running 2 Circle for pretty much the same reason. It's a really good consistency tool. It's a great way to turn any one Tenyi into another Tenyi. But I don't really want to be seeing multiples of these in my opening hand. And I ideally only want to see 1 Vessel and 1 Cycle in my opening hand. Circle is definitely a card I've considered playing more than 2 of, just because it's an incredible tool for breaking boards when you're going second. If you have Circle in hand, you can attempt to bait out some of your opponent's interaction, and then drop Circle on them when they chain a targeted effect to your monster, and then just get resources right back to your hand. Circle is also a pretty decent card to set turn 1. Being able to dodge some of your opponent's effects and put another body on board really helps you stick around and get you a crackback turn. And that brings us to our non-engine slots. I'm running 3 Book of Moon and 2 Cosmic Cyclone. 3 Book of Moon because I find that the turn 1 board for Tenyi is a little bit underwhelming. Your goal when going first with Tenyi is just to survive and then obliterate your opponent on the crackback. And being able to set a Book of Moon with your turn 1 board almost guarantees that you'll get your turn to crackback. Additionally, Book of Moon's great going second. I don't need to explain Book of Moon. We all know why this card is great. Actually really excited and happy to see that's made a resurgence in the TCG as well. And then 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. I was a little nervous about only playing the 2 copies of Cosmic, but in all of my duels, I haven't missed the 3rd copy at all. Vishuddha, being able to return your opponent's back row to their hand, is incredibly valuable, and you can kind of treat this as extra back row removal. Technically, we're running 5 copies of it. And that brings us to our extra deck. I have the start of the show, Monk of the Tenyi, at 3 copies. I'm sorry, all my free-to-play players, Monk is another card that I think is a mandatory 3 of. Constantly being able to threaten turning on all of your Tenyi's bonus effects is far too valuable. There's also some funky hands that require you to make 2 monks on your setup turn, just to get the right names in the right places, and if you don't have the monk for the follow-up, there's a chance you may just lose the duel. And that brings us to Shaman of the Tenyi. Shaman has a ton of text on it, but it can be explained pretty simply. You can discard a card, revive a Worm-type monster from graveyard, but you're locked into only activating the effect of Tenyi monsters for the rest of their turn. Fun fact about this effect, you can use it to revive Draco Berserker the Tenyi. Shaman's second effect, when a non-effect monster you control attacks or is attacked, you can destroy a card in the field. This comes up from time to time. Occasionally your opponent will give you a freebie and attempt to crash into your monk without realizing that Shaman is going to destroy their monster. Shaman is an incredible card and something I've considered running 2 of. Because its revival effect is incredibly valuable, it allows you to keep link climbing or get the right materials in place for a synchro summon, and most of the time the discard is free because you're pitching a name that you've recycled off of Adhara. Next up is Draco Master. If I was going to cut anything for the second Shaman, it would probably be Draco Master. It's a good card, but it's a little too situational and niche. Its effects can be summed up pretty simply as well. Cannot be destroyed by battle with an effect monster, and then it has a non-targeting pop attached to it, provided you control no effect monsters. Last up is Berserker the Tenyi, and I can explain this one very simply. Who says Konami prints cards with too much text on them? Draco Berserker is just a big body, non-effect monster, which means making it will turn back on all of your Tenyi's bonus effects. Our last 2 slots belong to Draco Berserker the Tenyi. This one is very easy to explain. It's a powerful card that was just added to the game and we're all hyped about it. It's limited to 1 for a reason. Bonus points for the bonus synergy with our Tenyi archetype. Lastly, we have Boxia. Boxia is a card I always feel like I should be playing more of, but every time I resolve it I win, and normally I only need to make it once. For those of you unfamiliar with Boxia, it can spin cards back to your opponent's deck. Most commonly this will be 2, because you're always going to be making it with 2 different attributes monsters. Boxia also has a really cool effect that comes up from time to time. You can target a card you control, destroy it, and special summon a level 4 lower monster from your graveyard. When this effect comes up, you'll make Boxia, break your opponent's board, use it to get back a Tenyi, use that Tenyi to make Monk, and turn on all of your other Tenyi's bonus effects again. Now I think it's time for us to cover the 2 Tenyi cards that we are not playing. We have Nahada. Nahada isn't bad. I wouldn't call it good, but I also wouldn't call it bad. There are times in which dropping my opponent's attack would have come up clutch, but more often than not I've been able to survive my opponent's turn and get him on the crackback anyways. I think Nahada is probably something you could play as a one-of, and the main reason to play it as a one-of would just be to have another name that you could special summon. But if you're playing enough Vessel and enough Circle, I really don't think you need it. If you are going to go the free-to-play route and you're only going to end up playing 2 Ashuna and 2 Vishuddha, I would highly recommend adding a Nahada just to get an extra name into rotation. And then we have Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi. You read this card and your eyes pop out of your head and you go, this is one of the most busted cards ever printed in Yu-Gi-Oh! It turns your big extra deck monsters into towers, and it is Pot of Greed. But unfortunately, in Tenyi, it is the epitome of win more. This card would be significantly better if we had a better suite of hand traps in Duel Links, or a better suite of cards that you could use from hand on your opponent's turn. But as I mentioned earlier, the goal of Tenyi for turn 1 is to survive, and unfortunately Flawless Perfection doesn't really help you survive all that much. It gives you extra resources for the crackback, but you got to make it to the crackback. This is something that you could play as a one-of, and it would be perfectly fine, but I'd rather just not include it at all. That's it for the deck profile, everybody. I think I'm going to take a few minutes just to talk, because this is the first time we've been talking in a while. Hello, how are all of you? I've missed you dearly, hope you feel the same. Some of you who keep up to date on the community tab on my YouTube channel may have noticed that I was throwing a fit the other day. I had almost 8,000 gems saved up, and I really wanted to pull Tenyi so I could get back into playing Duel Links with a deck that I find incredibly fun and interesting. And I did not have great pulls at all. It was one of the most frustrating moments of my entire life. There's a pack pull video that will never see the light of day because I start out in the beginning bright, cheery, and hopeful, and by the end of it I am dropping expletives and just ranting like a madman about nonsensical things. My schedule looks like it's starting to kind of settle a little bit, and I may have some more free time coming up in the near future, and I plan to be making videos. Please let me know down in the comments what videos you'd like to see. If you want to see some replays and some live duels with this deck list, let me know. I absolutely adore playing this deck list. Tenyi is so incredibly fun, and one of the things I love the most about it is I actually prefer going second. Imagine saying that in modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, modern Duel Links. Yeah, I hope I get to go second. One of the best things about going second with Tenyi is I don't ever feel like I need non-engine cards to win the duel. Opening something like Vishuddha, Adhara, Ashuna, and Circle makes me feel near unbeatable. That's 4 non-engine cards. If you give me a 5th card on top of that, I feel like I can end world hunger, I guess. Another one of the things that's got me excited about Tenyi is the future support that could come, which could keep this deck relevant and good for a very long time. And I'm not just talking about Sword Soul. We all know how much Tenyi loves to be paired up with Sword Soul, but that combination is probably just a little bit too broken for Duel Links right now. They still have some in-archetype stuff that was left out. They have the Link 4 Sasahara, and they also have their counter trap. Either one of those would take Tenyi up another level. A non-Tenyi card that could come that might be able to boost Tenyi a little bit would be Danglong. Since it's a level 5 Worm type synchro, it could completely change the way you build the deck. It would give more purpose to the level 4 Tenyis, and could even serve as a bridge to marry the Yang Zings and the Tenyis together, something that's kind of missing right now. Alright everybody, I think I'm done rambling about Tenyi. Thank you as always for watching. Please let me know down in the comments what you want to see next. If you want to see free-to-play, replays, live duels, or if you want to see me even try out a different deck. Thanks again. Be safe, have fun everybody.